So, as I mentioned in my last video, I first picked up film photography about a year ago, just over a year in fact, and for the past 13-14 months or so, I've been exploring with different styles and genres of photography on film. I recently spent some time filing away all my negatives, and I figured it would be a good opportunity to look through my work over the past year, draw some parallels from what I like and don't like, make those connections, and set myself some goals for the next year of shooting film, while still allowing myself some space to explore. After all, a year is not really very long in the world of photography, and I'm still very much learning a lot about my own work, what I enjoy shooting, the kind of photos I enjoy making, and what sort of avenues I want to follow in order to improve my work. So with that being said, I've put together a small-ish handful of photos that I'm going to share with you, and I'll share some ideas and thoughts about each photo and each composition, what camera they were taken on, what film stock, maybe a little bit about the thought behind each photo. We'll check back at the end to quickly discuss what I've taken from this list and how I want to move forward with my photography. Alright, let's do it. We'll start off here with a few photos from January 2024, and we'll continue in chronological order throughout. So these first three photos you're going to see were all taken on my Canon AE1 program, equipped with a Canon FD 50mm f1.8 lens. I'm shooting here on Ilford HP5 Plus and pushing the film a couple of stops to 1600. It was a pretty gloomy grey day at the Barbican Centre in London, so I figured pushing the film would allow me to get a bit more out of it in the lower light situation, and then the added grain and contrast would also be beneficial to this location. Pairs nicely with that classic brutalist style of the Barbican building. The first two of these photos share some similarities and features which I really enjoy. We have lots of straight vertical lines juxtaposed with a fairly aggressive curve and a repeating pattern of some sort. Quite pleasing to look at, I think, and I do believe that black and white makes a huge difference here. I can't imagine enjoying these shots as much if they were in colour. The third image from this location starts somewhat of a trend in this list of photos. An empty, almost lifeless location with the addition of one or two people throughout, usually alone, with a few other hints of human interaction or existence scattered throughout the scene, bringing the location to life. I enjoy the loneliness or the melancholy that I personally take from the emotion given off in the subject. I hope that makes some sort of sense. Moving on now, sticking with HP5 at 1600. This time we're outside a local pub, a few doors down from where a close family member lives. This photo in particular encapsulates the general sort of atmosphere I try to capture as much as I can in my photos. Again, this scene is quite basic and empty, but there are a few signs of life thrown in, history even if only recent. The old garden table, the chalkboard all smudged out with today's beers still slightly visible, who knows how old that list is. We've also got this kind of yin and yang thing going on with the black and white twisting around each other, overlapping here and there. That's pretty neat. Next up we have this shot near Covent Garden in London, this time taken on my old Olympus Infinity Highlight. It's a cheap little point and shoot that I'm really quite fond of. The HP5 is the film stock of choice again, but this time at box speed, mainly because this camera doesn't have the option to change ISO. There's not too much I can say about this photo which I didn't already say about the interior one at the Barbican, except that I love the fact that the subject's face isn't visible here, another recurring feature in this list. It leaves a lot open to interpretation but still speaks to me on quite an emotional level. I could also go on about leading lines and all that, but really, the vibe's just hitting this picture. Next up we have a photo which I honestly find quite amusing. Still using HP5, but only pushing one stop to 800. I just love how the subject has her fists clenched. It's quite a solid stance going on, like she's fuming at the baguettes on display or something. I don't know, maybe that's the main reason I like it. It's not a particularly interesting scene, just a bit of fun, even if that wasn't the original intention in the photo. I also really like the kind of silhouette of her shadow. Again, you can't really make out any facial features. I quite enjoy that. Moving on, we have our first of very few colour photos in this list. We were at Pride in London here last summer, shooting on Portra 160. This was one of the most enjoyable days I've had taking photos so far. Just an amazing atmosphere all around, pretty much perfect for taking super high energy street style photos on a glorious summer day uptown. Colour film was pretty much the only choice here. I love how it's difficult to tell which way the main subject is facing. For a while I thought they were actually facing the camera, their face obscured by the flag, but I realised a few weeks later that they are actually facing away from the camera, and that this hand holding the phone actually belongs to the lady in the sunnies here. Back to the perpetual misery now. Black and white is the choice once more. This time we've got Kodak Tri-X in the Canon AE1 and I'm using the 35mm f2.8 lens. This photo was taken around St Catherine Docks in London. I'd spent the morning struggling for inspiration, walking around for a couple of hours but not really making anything I was particularly excited about. Then I stumbled across this location, loaded up some Tri-X and found myself enjoying photography more than I had in a good few weeks. The lighting is what hits here. Add in the two subjects strolling off into the distance like they're in the last scene of a good old-fashioned western, and you've got a nice, almost cozy composition. Yeah, I like this one a lot. I definitely need to work more with Tri-X. Next up here we have the first picture from this list taken on my Olympus 35 SP. This is at Seven Sisters Cliffs, the same location from my previous video, but a few months earlier when the weather was less than ideal. I had PhotoLab 200 in the camera, a film stock I really like, and this was my favourite from the trip. The subject looks so at peace here, reading her book sat near the cliff edge. This photo kind of reminds me to enjoy the simpler things in life, the peacefulness of nature and the outdoors, get away from the city from time to time. I need to do more of that this year. Sticking here with the Olympus 35 SP, this time using Kentmere 400 at box speed, in Brighton on a super windy but sunny day. This was one of those photos which became a good lesson in patience. I'd been waiting at this location to see if anyone would walk into frame, and thankfully these two lads did. Then all I needed was a big wave to crash against the wall, and Bob's your father's brother. A nice reminder to myself that I don't always have to be on the move when taking photos. Sometimes waiting for the right moment, the promising composition can result in a decent photo. Here we have the second of only 3 colour photos from this selection, and actually it probably would look better in black and white. In any case, Portrait 800 in my Canon AE1, we're in the Bourne Woods in December just after Christmas. I noticed this huge cloud of fog creeping out of the woods on the right side of the frame, towards this crop of a few trees standing alone. The fog sort of hugged these trees as it swept around, right place at the right time to capture some nice winter atmosphere in such a nice location. Some more interior goodness with the next shot, inside Seven Dials Market in London. The Olympus 35 SP really has the upper hand in these situations with such a fast lens. Being able to open up to f1.7 in these low light scenarios truly comes in clutch. I've got HP5 in the camera at ISO 800. Combined with the leaf shutter, it's really quite stable when you need to slow down to something like 1/30th of a second handheld. Something I struggle with when using my AE1 and its ridiculous mirror slap. Anyway, I'm really pleased with this photo. Great atmosphere. The next shot really is near the top of my list from this year's work. Same day shooting as the last picture, same camera, same film stock. Again, f1.7 comes to the rescue. It was pretty much completely dark outside, just the lighting inside Covent Garden Market. I had 1 frame left on this roll, and I'd spent a good while looking for a decent final photo to make. My partner spotted this girl being carried by her father, I assume, and just as I raised my camera, she turned to look straight down the lens with this adorable little grin on her face. Yes, it's slightly out of focus, I'm still getting used to the rangefinder patch on this camera, but I love this photo anyway. It never fails to make me smile. 2 more now from shortly after the new year. PhotoLab 200 pushed a couple of stops to 800 in my trusty Canon AE1. I can't say much about these that I haven't already said about others in the list, except that I really enjoy how both of the subjects in each of these photos look so deep in thought. Like they're contemplating something life-changing, going through some emotional turmoil, or maybe just longing for that insanely fresh Brick Lane bagel bake jacket at the sweet, sweet price of only £145. Pretty dank. We'll end this list with a shot from my recent trip to Seven Sisters from my last video. I felt like I should throw some colour in here at the end, and as I said in that video, Kodak Gold hit the spot on this day. I'm not sure any other film stock would have captured the essence of this location in such great weather. The subject, however, is doing most of the heavy lifting in this scene. And it's another lesson in patience, holding up at a spot, waiting for the right subject to enter the frame, and there's your photo. So what exactly did I learn from this process? Well, firstly, I learned that going back through your own work and having a look through it is actually a pretty beneficial thing to do, as obvious as that may seem. There are many photos which I didn't enjoy when I first got the scans back. When I look at them now, months later, I have a very different opinion of them. Equally, there are some photos which at the time I thought were pretty great. Now I look back on them and realise maybe they're not so good. I also think there's not really much harm to be done in picking out some favourites and talking about them like I've just done. I often see in the photography community people say that you really have to be overly critical of your own work, which I understand, but I do think there's a big difference between creatively critiquing art and only just pointing out the negatives. It's almost become this sort of sin to actually find things that you enjoy in your own photos. That just doesn't sit right with me. In any case, I think that actively looking for the positives in your own work, finding the things you genuinely enjoy, can really be beneficial, if only at least to give yourself some rough ideas of how to move forward. Follow those things that you do well and embrace them. For my work, I've learned that black and white is probably the way to go most of the time. I'm not saying I'll never shoot colour film, quite the opposite. In fact, shooting colour film is something I'm actively trying to get better at. But when it comes to potential photo projects, I can't really see any scenario in which I don't want to shoot them in just black and white. This process has just taught me that this is the kind of look that just speaks to me the most. I feel like that's when my identity as a photographer starts to show, even if only at the very, very early stages. There's a quote from Robert Frank which really sums up how I feel about black and white photography, and it reads, "Black and white are the colours of photography. To me, they symbolise the alternatives of hope and despair to which mankind is forever subjected." You cut me deep, Robert. You cut me real deep just now. Anyway, with that, I shall say thank you so much for joining me in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join me again next time. Peace!